This is the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Senior. Hope all of Laker Nation is having a phenomenal week. Coming up on today's show, a bunch of the latest Lakers news and rumors on some really notable players throughout this offseason. Here's who we're talking about. Zach LaVine. Is he going to go to Chicago, or is he going to hit NBA free agency and become a sought-after target in the free agent ranks? Could the Lakers go after Gary Trent Jr.? That continues to be a simmering rumor out there. Christian Wood reportedly getting shot by the Houston Rockets. If that's the case, should the Lakers show interest? And Danny Green, could a reunion come up on the horizon? Suffered that knee injury in the NBA playoffs in Game 6 against the Miami Heat, but Philadelphia, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer, reportedly shopping him. We're going to get to all of that on today's show, but first, we're going to start off with Zach LaVine because he is the star-studded player of this cast. According to Bleacher Report's Jake Fischer, league sources expect that LaVine is going to resign with the Chicago Bulls. The West Coast native and UCLA grad had been linked to the Lakers very loosely, but you know how the NBA rumor streets get. Once things gets cooking, man, it can really get wild. And the NBA free agency window does open up on June 30th. Make sure you subscribe to the Lakers Report because we'll keep you up to date with every free agent that they sign. And you also subscribe to our main Chat Sports YouTube channel because we'll be going live for hours on end. As for my thoughts on Zach LaVine, really like him as a player. He's an uber hyper-athletic scorer who, despite dealing with some injuries, that hasn't really affected his shooting output. If I'm Zach LaVine and I'm looking at the future of the Lakers, LeBron James hasn't committed to signing that contract extension. Anthony Davis can't stay healthy. There aren't a lot of young pieces on this roster. I'd go back to Chicago because when everybody was healthy for the Bulls last year, they were the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. Then everybody started dropping like flies. Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, and that's when the Bulls started to struggle. If I'm LaVine, I want to see what the Bulls can do at full strength. Do you have faith that the Lakers front office during this offseason, in the draft, if they end up buying a pick or in free agency, can make the right decisions to get this franchise back on track? Type Y for yes in the comment section or N for no. Interested to see what you all have to say. As for Gary Trent Jr., Raptors rumors continue to simmer out there in the NBA universe, and they could trade for Rudy Gobert. They could trade away OG Anunoby. Could Gary Trent Jr. be dealt as well? An anonymous Eastern Conference exec told Sean Deveney, an NBA insider for Heavy.com, that a trade for Gary Trent Jr. could be an option, and the Lakers reportedly did explore a trade for him at the NBA trade deadline. The reported offer at the time, Kendrick Nunn, Talen Horton-Tucker, and that 2027 first-round pick. Here's what that anonymous executive had to say about Gary Trent maybe being dealt to the Lakers. The pick is the key thing here. If the Raptors think that pick is going to be valuable, and it might very well be, then it makes some sense. Horton-Tucker and Nunn, you assume he is going to play again and be a pretty good bargain. The Raptors like THT. Remember, they wanted him in the Kyle Lowry deal that fell through with the Lakers. It is hard to say what kind of future Trent is going to have there if they'll pay him. So if they think they can get assets back now, it is something to certainly explore. And if you can trade away Kendrick Nunn, a first, and THT for Gary Trent Jr., it's pretty good value for LA because I think Gary Trent Jr. is a pretty solid player. If the Lakers make any move of significance or little significance, we'll be the first ones to let you know. That's why we're closing in on 46,000 subscribers. Can we get to that mark on this video alone? Let's do it. Can Laker Nation, the Lake Show, show up and show out? Just hit that red subscribe button down below. 149 people away from 46K. Let's get there because we keep you up to date all year round on all things going down with Los Angeles. As for what Gary Trent Jr. has been able to do throughout his career, I love players who show monumental improvements year after year. And you look at the numbers here, that's what Gary Trent Jr. has been able to do. 2018-19 only started one game. He basically wasn't in the rotation for the Portland Trailblazers. The following year starts to get a little bit more run, and he got more starts. 9 points per game, 44.5% from the field, and nearly 42% from three. So going into that offseason, it was a big one for him, and the Trailblazers realized, okay, this guy's pretty good, but he's going to get paid at some point. That's why he was traded at the NBA trade deadline to Toronto. He still had a really good year, 15.5 points per game, shot around 39% from distance. And then this past year, best year of his career from a scoring standpoint, 18 points per game, knocked down about 41% of his shots and 38% with volume from beyond the arc. So for LA, I've said this time and time again, you got to get more athletic. You got to get a little bit younger. And Gary Trent Jr. fits the profiles of getting that length, getting that athleticism, and just getting a little bit younger on this roster, a roster that last year was the oldest in the history of the NBA. I want to hear from you in regards to Gary Trent Jr. Your level of interest in him is what? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1, not interested at all. He can hit the road, Jack. We don't want him here. Or 10, you're all in. Let me know in the comment section. Now we pivot to Christian Wood. Are the Houston Rockets shopping him? And if that's the case, should the Lakers go after him? Now, I think it's a little bit of a clash in terms of fit with Anthony Davis, but reports do suggest that the Rockets could deal Christian Wood this offseason. Some concerns, some questions about his cultural fit down there in Houston, which is a concern down there because they're trying to build this young roster led by Jalen Green right now. This report coming from Hoops Hype and Michael Scotto, rival executives who have spoken with Hoops Hype, expect the Rockets to gauge the trade market on Wood's value this summer. Houston needs to decide if Wood, who turns 27 in December, is going to be a long-term member of the core or be traded for future assets that they may align better with Jalen Green and potentially Paolo Banchero, depending on how the draft board falls. Now, Wood is a really good player. Pretty interesting story as well. Highly touted recruit coming out of high school, goes to UNLV, and doesn't have the greatest college career. Elects to go to the NBA draft early and was undrafted. But he can score it, he can rebound it. A classic stretch four, and a classic big man nowadays who you want on your team who can shoot the rock from the outside and has playmaking ability. Those of you who are subscribed to the Lakers Report, thank you so much for supporting everything that we do, but also on our main Chat Sports YouTube channel. Last week, we eclipsed 300,000 subscribers, and we're going to be going live Thursday, June 23rd for the 2022 NBA Draft. Myself, Harrison Graham, breaking down every single selection you don't want to miss. The most watched NBA Draft coverage on YouTube as well as Rumble, so make sure you subscribe to our main Chat Sports YouTube channel. Could a Danny Green reunion with Los Angeles happen? Won an NBA championship in the bubble back in 2020. Could he make his way back to the West Coast from the East Coast in Philadelphia? Multiple reports out there, led by Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer, that the Sixers expected to explore trade packages for Green as well as the 23rd overall pick. Now, he suffered that gruesome knee injury. Most notably, it was a torn ACL with some other torn ligaments in there. He's also on an expiring deal worth about $10 million. So when is he going to be able to come back? That's a big question. And how is he going to be able to come back off the knee injury, considering the tread on the tires for a guy who's been in the league forever, coming out of UNC, who's also won 3 NBA championships and has played deep into the playoffs. Won a title with the Spurs, the Raptors, and then with the Lakers in 2020. At this point, Danny Green is a very good cultural fit and a guy who is still a pretty solid defender. He is not the defender that he was even back during the bubble season, but he has that corner three down. He's not afraid to shoot it. He's played in a bunch of big games. He is a great leader, very smart basketball player, pretty good podcaster as well. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets involved in the media landscape, but you look at the numbers here, consistently he has been throughout his career, especially the last few years, a guy who hovers between 36 and 40% from three-point range. So if you're the Lakers, I just got done saying, I want to get younger, I want to get more athletic. Danny Green doesn't fit that profile. He does fit a nice little need of being that 3-and-D player who the Lakers don't have. So with that, I want to ask you this. Pick a trade plan and pick a move that you would prefer the Lakers to make. You want to trade for Christian Wood? Type A as plan A. If you want to go for Danny Green and that first-round pick, type B. For Philadelphia, they're trying to shed some salary cap to build around Joel Embiid and James Harden. So you let me know what the better trade plan is right now in the comment section.